The timeline of our life and some of the details were really important to share how our life happened, how the events happened, and to kind of also give an idea of how that shaped who we were to each other and how we managed to live together that long with such debilitating disease and disability.
I'm going to say that I loved, I have loved hearing your guys' stories. I've loved hearing the fairy tale. You guys had what a lot of people don't get the opportunity to have. And it's certainly something I didn't have till much later in my life. Um, so it's been inspiring to me to hear that this love story existed and continues to exist today, because I can still see how much you love him to this very day.
I do. I and talking about our life together, especially the early life, remembering how we fell in love and how much in love we were, it just brings it all back. And I think it's kind of funny that you call it a fairy tale. I've never believed in fairy tales, but I guess I have kind of lived the life of a fairy tale. You think a fairy tale is a happy ending. And I think that's why I'm saying it kind of cracks me up. This wasn't a happy ending, but we did live with all that love, all those years, most of the years. There were some pretty rough years in there. I'm not going to lie about that. But that was what carried us through, was our love for each other. And I'm so happy to have all the letters. I know I've talked about that before, but I just recently read a couple of those letters from right after we met, some of the letters that he wrote to me. And it still to this day brings back all those feelings that I had back then.
Can I share a story? And I don't, if you choose not to include it, then that's fine. If it's something that's uncomfortable for you or you don't want to share, but it's a story that when you asked me to think of the things I remembered, the stories of you and Lance together, there were plenty that were funny and cute and sweet. But the moment that was most impactful to me, where I saw you guys and I saw Lance and RuthAnn through the years, because I saw the real and the love, was a day that I came over and I came over, and this is when Lance had his catheter, and you would you would change it and empty it, and it had to be measured. So it had to go into another container. And you were emptying the bag, and he decided to move or help you or shift, and it went everywhere. And I just remember you being so frustrated and mad at him, and he was apologizing, and you were trying to get it cleaned up. And I just remember you looking at him. I remember you looking at him and saying, "It's okay, it's not your fault." And he apologized, and you touched his hand and said, "It's okay." And that was when I saw you guys. It was so beautiful. And even though it was messy and it was not perfect, it was love. It was an act of love and service for him. And I believe he was trying to help you. And it didn't go so well. And he felt so bad. And then you felt bad that you got upset, and you guys immediately reconciled. And everything was fine. And it didn't mean that it wasn't hard, and it didn't mean that it wasn't messy. It just meant that it was real life and that you loved each other. Anyway.
Uh, I love that memory. That just made me cry. Um, that was that was our whole life together. That was how we were from the very beginning, that we would get irritated about something and the other person's feelings would get hurt, and we would instantly realize it and we would talk it out and it would be done. We didn't carry those things with us into the next day. And there were a few years, like I've said, that were rough, but from the very beginning, that was how we were with each other.
I'm sorry.
No.
I thought I could tell that story. And I wasn't sure if you wanted me to bring it up, but it was by far the most impactful thing that I saw. It is stuck out in my mind as inspiring, if that's a way to describe it. It inspired me because my relationship with my husband was so new at that point. I was just going back into marriage, and you think, oh gosh, I hope I have it figured out this time. But I saw that and it inspired me, and I thought, okay, I can do this, and this can be good. And look at what these two have done. Look at them. It was incredible.
Thank you for sharing that. That brought back a lot of memories. And I always felt like I was so impatient with him because I would feel the impatience inside of me. And I would feel all the things that I wanted to say and all the frustration that I was having. And a lot of times I would set up the video camera at home just to record our daily life because I knew that there were things that I wanted to remember. Or somebody would tell me something like what you just said, and I realized that I wasn't as impatient as I thought I was, and I wasn't showing it outwardly as much as I thought I was. And I think that that's something that's really important for people to realize when they're in the midst of caregiving and it's so hard and it's so challenging. All the things that you feel and all the things that you think are not necessarily things that you are putting out there. I did learn to mask that pretty early on, and that started in the beginning after that first surgery, because when I walked into that room and I thought he was dead, and he opened his eyes and he saw the look on my face, and that scared him. And he told me that later. He's like, I was so scared. Like, what has just happened here? And we talked about it. But after that, I learned to mask it. I wasn't hiding it from him. We would talk about it later, but I needed to be able to be strong so that he could be strong. We had to be strong for each other. And then there was a time later that we could talk about it when it wasn't fresh or when it wasn't so scary.
I think you guys did a really good job of prioritizing going back to that conversation and actually having the conversation. And I learned that from you, the importance of having the conversation, maybe not in that moment when you're both upset or heated, or either one of you is upset, but having the conversation later on, being purposeful about making sure that that conversation is had later on. And it's served me well in many of my relationships, not just in marriage, but in many relationships, to say maybe it's not productive in this moment, but later we can talk about it. And that's always produced, I think, a much better result than just ignoring it or having a blow up when everybody's feelings are out on the line. So
right, in the heat of the moment is not a good time to have a conversation about the things that you're upset with each other about. And we really tried not to do that. We didn't get really, most of the years that we were married, we didn't really do that. We were pretty good about staying level-headed with each other, which was really a gift, I think. And then, you know, early on, because he was diagnosed so early in our marriage, and our life was changing so differently than everyone else around us, we couldn't relate to our friends and they couldn't relate to us So we were spending more time, just the two of us, and we started saying, it's Lance and RuthAnn against the world. And that was how we lived out the rest of our life together. And somebody pointed out to us at one time that in saying that, we were in some ways, we were shutting people out of our life, or we were excluding them from our life. And that wasn't what we meant by that at all. What we meant by that was, this is our life. We have to live it the way that works for us. We cannot accommodate everyone else because we have so many other things going on. And Lance was getting sicker, and he was having more symptoms, and he was tired, and he didn't have the energy, and I didn't have the energy. So we needed to live life on our terms. And anyone who wanted to was welcome to come and walk alongside us on the journey that we were on. But we couldn't join them on their journey because ours was so difficult, and we weren't able to accommodate them. So we had to do it that way. And so we invited people into our journey. Most people, though, especially in the early days, we had a few that stuck around, but most people chose to just go off on their own because they didn't want to be a part of our journey. And that was okay. I mean, it hurt, but it was okay because we needed to do what was right for us. So it was Lance and RuthAnn against the world.
You guys did a very good job of being purposeful with your time, redeeming the time that you had together to just to spend with each other, to build memories together, and just, I think, live in a way that we should all live. Because I think about your story, and you and I have talked about the fact that none of us know when our last day is with the people that we love the most. And if it's important to us to cultivate a close relationship or memories or any of those things, then we should get to doing that right now, because we don't know. We think we all have all this time ahead of us, but we don't know. And you guys, even though you didn't know his last day, you knew you were fairly certain that you were going to bury your husband from a very early age. I don't know that. And in all reality, neither did you. Neither did you. That was your best assumption based on the facts you had in front of you. It turned out to be true. But you guys lived out your days as if they were your last. And it has inspired me to pick my battles, to be careful what I say, to be intentional about my time, to say I love you, to say I'm sorry, to tell people how I really feel about them, so that they're never left wondering, you know, whether or not I valued their relationship. And I know that I've expressed what they mean to me. So you guys taught me a lot about that.
Well, and I think where that came from, actually, I know where that came from for us, was the first 2.5 years that we were together, we didn't have hardly any time to spend together. We were separated a lot. So when we were together, we made every moment count. So we didn't spend our time fighting. We spent our time doing the things that we wanted to do to have fun. We wanted to laugh. We wanted to enjoy our time together. And you can't do that when you're fighting all the time. So we were very intentional about the ways that we spent our time. And if there was a disagreement, I think that's why we were so quick to just get it out and get it over with and move on, because we didn't want to live in that. And we didn't want that to be something that came between us.
Well, it shows very much in the life that you lived and the type of relationship you had right up to the very end. You could see the love that you had for each other. And that, I can't even imagine how many people were impacted by that. I know for me, and even my kids, and other people that, mutual acquaintances that we have, I know you guys made such a huge impact, not least of all because of the way you loved each other.
And that from the very beginning. I mean, we had that love, but then also me being his caregiver, that's what most people saw, was me being his caregiver. But in the beginning, because I had had that car accident 5 days before we got married, he had to take care of me in the beginning. So we didn't have a lot of time together. But in that first year, he was taking care of me. And then after that, there were, well, for the next several years until he wasn't able to do it anymore, he cleaned the bathroom and he did the dishes, because those were things that hurt my back. And he always made sure to take care of me in that way. And so we started off with him taking care of me, and we ended it with me taking care of him.
I love that. You guys had a fairy tale.
We did. And then while he was deployed, we missed so much time together. We missed all those, the first anniversary, our birthdays, and then several holidays. So we learned to just celebrate whenever we felt like it, because he came home and we had a list of things that we had missed. And so we just celebrated it then. And from that point on, we carried that celebration forward. Well, this seems like a good time to celebrate this. And so we did. We just celebrated everything. And that was how we lived out the last 10 years of his life too. And we've talked about not having a bad appointment. We celebrated not having a bad appointment. And that was where that came from, was that initial celebration. We just started celebrating everything. And it just made life so much better. It made it so much easier when we knew we had something to look forward to, and a celebration of, it might sound silly celebrating nothing, but having a celebration, knowing that you have a celebration to look forward to, is something.
Absolutely.
One of the most important things that I learned early on, and this is something that I talk about in possibly every episode, is the importance of self-care. And I am so thankful that I learned that early on in his disease, because I really did learn how important that was to keep me from getting burned out so easily. I still got burned out because it was a very hard life. But if I hadn't had those practices in place early on, where I knew that I needed a break, I knew that I needed to take some time for myself, even if it was just 5 minutes, because towards the end, especially the last 3 years, there were a lot of days that I maybe only had 5 minutes. But that 5 minutes was enough for me to just get out, take a deep breath, and put myself in a different frame of mind. So self-care was one of the most important things that I learned. And I will probably talk about that in almost every episode, if not every episode, because that is just so important when you're a caregiver.
Agreed. I think it's important for everyone, but particularly so if you are caring for someone else. It becomes more glaringly obvious when you aren't taking care of yourself, because then you're not as able to take care of the other individual.
Well, and that's when you start to see the things like, you're wondering, what is wrong with that person? Why was she so angry at me when I just asked her a question? She just ripped my head off. Well, it's because I haven't been practicing self-care either. Well, most likely because I didn't have the time. So when you start seeing somebody get to that point where they're snapping, they're angry, whatever, things that are out of character for them, or things that you can just tell that they're frustrated, maybe that's a good time to ask them if there's anything you can do to help.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining me, Jenna. I will see you next time.
All right. Thank you. Bye.